Hi, everybody. Before we call the meeting to order, I'm just going to remind everybody, if they don't mind, just to keep their microphones muted so that we can kind of cut down on some of the distractions. All right, as it is 5 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order for the City of Charleston Tourism Commission. First thing on our agenda, as always, is our moment of silence. So I'll just ask everybody just to take a moment to reflect on the things at hand. Thank you, everyone. First of all, thanks to Ms. Grant, who's on our call. She provided us with some amended minutes. So you should have received today from Lee 2 sets of minutes, one from our December meeting, our December 9th meeting, and the second from our recent meeting of this year in February on the 24th. So I think what I'll do, and let me back up. The reason we did that is in our last meeting, there was some discussion amongst the group that we needed to amend some of the previous minutes. And so what we chose to do was just continue on, accept them for the time being with some adjustments. So I'm going to break it apart in separate just so we can have some clarity and discussion. So from our minutes from December 9th, again, we made some changes, just some basic wording. I think there was a discussion, if I remember, about how we were FOIA information that went out from Mr. Doman. Mr. Doman did provide a follow-up in the second meeting. So are there any discussions or needs to adjust anything else further from the December 9th minutes? Anybody have any comments or concerns that they need to bring up? All right, hearing none, I just need to put a motion. If you don't mind, just unmute your microphones or raise your hand. So I just need a motion. I'm sorry, who did that?
Councilmember Del Chapo.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. Moore. All those in favor say aye of accepting the minutes.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so let's do the same drill for the second set. So this would be for the second set of minutes, which you had reviewed. There was a couple things highlighted, I think, if you saw, that we were just going to follow up with either today or in our future meeting. But does anybody have any changes or amendments to the second set of amendments from the February 24th meeting? All right, hearing nothing, I'll just need a motion on the floor to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Yeah, thank you, council member. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Lots of seconds. I'll use you, Mr. Yance. Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, so we have a very busy meeting today. I understand that we have public input. My understanding is we have 7 people on the call, plus we also have one that either needs to be addressed or read. I'll let Mr. Burbidge handle that. So we're going to yield 2 minutes to every person, and Mr. Burbidge is going to let you in. So if you, again, don't mind, just mute your microphones back while we go through public input.
In the interest of time, we do have a public comment from a Harvey Lowe, and it is regarding the safety ordinance that we are packet that we are discussing this evening. And I'm going to enter it into the record and email it to all the commission members so that they have a chance to read it. But because we do have so many people who have requested to speak, I'm just going to summarize the letter. Safety to people and animals who are involved in the carriage ride tourism business need to be executed and not just expressed. Acting intelligently and prudently needs to be enforced. Common sense cannot be relied on since the interpretations are varied. Below are the research safety compliancy principles at a minimum that require compliance. Guardrails of adults. Drug testing of carriage employees, and that the city should not rely on a standard that is not available to the public. Codifying CONA guidelines without delineating what those guidelines are, since they're not available to the public, should not be the norm. And every operator make a report to the city adding animals to their herd that includes animal's name, microchip, number, prior owner, and whether the animal has any prior working experience in Charleston or other urban environments. And like I said, I will email that this letter to each and every one of the commission members so that it will be entered into the record. First on our list to speak is Brian Turner.
Hey, Lee, before we do that, can you send Brumby the link to sign in? He's messaging through chat.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mike.
He's on right now, but he came on with my name because I forwarded him my link. So that's Brumby McLeod.
If Brumby is here, I can make him if he's in the participants, I can promote him to a
He's on now, Lee, but he's under my list because I forwarded my invite. So if you can, it's fine. I think you can. Everybody knows who Brumby is, and he's fine right there.
Okay, perfect. All right, and Mr. Turner, can you hear us?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Sabo and members of the commission. My name is Brian Turner, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Preservation Society of Charleston. Last year, we supported City Council's direction to have the Department of Livability and Tourism and city's legal staff review existing policy towards carriage rides. And we're grateful for the work of Dan Riccio and Mallory Shearer, who, following this extensive review, have provided you a series of feasible policies that will protect Charleston's reputation as one of the world's great tourist destinations. We believe it would send the wrong message for the commission to reject these common sense safety measures, especially those squarely designed to ensure passenger safety. We see many of these rules as basic and of minimal economic impact. Among them, rules to protect children by ensuring they're placed in the interior of carriages, licensing and training requirements for carriage operators, and annual inspections of carriages to ensure they're safe for our streets. We also strongly support the provisions that would improve emergency response in the case of accidents. This is particularly timely in light of last Saturday's well-publicized incident at Meeting in Broad. The commission has the opportunity to assure the public that safety of carriage passengers is a paramount concern. We would emphasize that the measures proposed by the department and city legal staff have been carefully vetted in a way that will help reduce the city's legal exposure. This is reason enough to adopt them. But most importantly, adopting common sense measures sends the right message to our visitors. Charleston must be a model for good tourism management. So we urge the commission to take seriously its civic responsibility to protect the health and safety of the millions who have the privilege of visiting this great city. Thank you all tonight for your public service. We look forward to a robust discussion and further engagement on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Next is Perrin Lawson.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm having a little trouble at home. I apologize for that. Yes, I'm Perrin Lawson. I'm with the Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, Explore Charleston. And we're asking that these proposed ordinances be deferred for the time being. We only became aware that these were even in process a couple of days ago. We have not had an opportunity to take an in-depth look at those, nor I believe has the carriage industry had a chance to look at them as well. And I think it would be only fair that we be allowed to look at those and see what impact they would have on the industry. We're certainly not saying to reject them or that some of them or even all of them might not be good. But at this point, it only seems fair that we'd have an opportunity to take an in-depth look at those and have some discussion with those who were involved in crafting them, and ask for your consideration in that. Thank you.
Lee, before you go on, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why they're not coming on the screen? If we were in person, we we'll be able to see these people. And the reason why they not showing up on screen or you know, if we're in person, we would be see them, we will be seeing them.
There's, I believe it's just a limitation of Zoom. I can, if they do have their camera on, I can promote them to a panelist. So that we can see them if they wish to have their camera on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that what the commission members would like me to do?
I know what Perrin looks like, but I don't know what Brian Turner looks like. And you know, it would. I think it was nice to be able to see these people if possible.
I agree.
I would support that. Yeah, I think so. Go ahead and do that, Lee. Go ahead and promote them to panelists, and then we can put them back after they had a chance to speak.
Right. Not a problem. Next on public input is Elizabeth Fort. Ms. Fort, are you there?
I am, but I thought my camera was on. Let me see if I can get it on. So sorry. Thankfully, I showered. Oh, there I am. Okay. Hi. Can everyone hear me? Great. Nice to see everyone. And I just had a quick question. When were the ordinances introduced? Like this provision? Based on Perrin's remark, I just am confused. I'm aware of what's going on. When did the public know that this was happening?
This is public comment. I'll defer to, you can make a comment.
Well, no, in terms of, I'm sorry, Perrin said that he didn't have an opportunity to review. And I'm just curious when this was online for those people to review.
I think what Mr. Ricci is saying is just during the public comment, we don't take questions.
Oh, I'm so
from the
very
audience,
sorry. Okay.
But it's
Okay.
certainly something I bet you will hear later on in this.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I apologize. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Fort, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Charlestown Neighborhood Association. The CNA was formed in 1978 to represent residents living south of Broad in downtown Charleston, and we currently have 616 members. The CNA supports efforts to establish and maintain reasonable, effective regulations to ensure the health and safety of citizens, passengers, workers, and animals in the carriage industry. Therefore, CNA endorses the citizen safety ordinance proposed by the city in its original unedited form. The city has a duty to regulate any industry operating on public rights of way, and most especially those with multiple safety concerns. The safety of carriages is a matter of paramount importance, not only for the people riding on the wagons, but for everyone in the downtown area, because wagons are prevalent. The city feels strongly, or the CNA feels strongly, that the minimal safeguards included in the original citizen safety ordinance are necessary given the increased traffic congestion on both sidewalks and streets. While the city states that it cannot conduct random drug testing of employees, the city can and should require that any company that receives a license to operate in the city maintain a policy that requires random drug testing before, during employment, and after any carriage-related incident. In addition, the city should not rely on any standard that is not available to the public, specifically CONA. The liability of using guidelines only available to carriage trade members should be concerning to the legal staff and those who are responsible for the safety of citizens and tourists in Charleston. Finally, every horse carriage operator should be required to report to the city when adding animals to their herd. This report should include the animal's name, microchip number, prior owner, and whether the animal has any prior experience working in Charleston and urban environments. These reports should be available to the public so residents and visitors have a minimum degree of transparency about whether the animals are brand new to the congested city streets or have experience working in urban environments.
Ms. Ford,
yes.
I am sorry, but that is you're over time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. All right, next on our list is Tyler Jones. Mr. Jones, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Tyler Jones from Charleston Cares, which is made up of the 3 largest carriage companies in the city. While our position remains that this entire ordinance is unnecessary and superfluous, especially since it was written by a special interest group whose sole purpose is to ban carriage tours in the city, we have always been willing to sit down and discuss ways to remain the safest and best run carriage company or carriage community in the entire country. But this ordinance does not do that. It creates arbitrary rules and regulations in the hopes of appeasing a political group, not because they're necessary or warranted. And there are a couple sections of this ordinance that we are generally not that opposed to, but not without significant changes to correct some obvious flaws and avoid unintended consequences. For example, Section 11B would require that our companies give the city 48 hours notice before a night tour. The problem with this is that most of our night tours are booked the day of a tour, which means that section would essentially ban all night tours in Charleston. Now, that was not the intention of the city, but it was an oversight in the language that needs to be corrected. And we pointed out several of these types of seemingly minor but really consequential flaws in the city's version of the ordinance and concluded that clearly more time is needed to prevent more of these unintended consequences. And to their credit, the city agreed with several of them. The worst thing we can do tonight is rush through an ordinance that isn't ready. And the version in front of you right now is nowhere near ready. And that's not the fault of the city. It just demonstrates the need for more communication, more time, and more collaboration with the industry that it seeks to impact. So we're asking you tonight to defer the routes, parking, and tourism rules report or send it back to subcommittee to simply allow for more time to work out these flaws. It will also give you more time to have conversations with us about what exactly we're trying to do here, how it will impact our businesses, and more importantly, for us to be able to answer your questions. And we're also asking you that you follow the guidance of the 2 subcommittees that rejected the sections of the ordinance that they reviewed. These are big changes that will have significant impacts on our businesses at a very tough time. All we're asking is to make sure that we get it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next is John Mulheron. Mr. Mulheron, are you there?
He's still muted. Lee, can you unmute him?
I can try, yes.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. This is John Mulheron speaking on behalf of the Charleston Tour Association. I'm a director of the association, a working certified tour guide, and a member of the Palmetto Guild. Most local tourism companies and tour guides are dues-paying members of the CTA, including all carriage company members of Charleston Cares. I'm offering 3 observations this afternoon on behalf of the CTA. Number 1, the CTA recognizes the need to engage on an ongoing basis with all constituents in local tourism to address and resolve the many issues and opportunities presented us in this very dynamic market. This engagement includes rulemaking and fair, consistent enforcement of existing ordinances. Number 2, the CTA perceives that the process of receiving, drafting, and evaluating a comprehensive ordinance proposed by a single issue interest group like the CCHA, is deeply flawed and inappropriate. This is evident in the numerous impractical, expensive, and unrealistic provisions that have been drafted and reviewed for almost a full year. The rejection of the majority of provisions by subcommittees seems to confirm the poor quality, bias, and impracticality of these proposals. Thirdly and last, the CTA endorses and supports the recommendation of CARES to defer consideration of the Routes, Parking, and Rules Subcommittee to permit more objective and thorough consideration and revision. We also support the recommendations that the subcommittee decisions to reject the majority of these provisions be adopted tonight by the full commission. Thank you for your time and consideration of our viewpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Mulhern. Next on our list is Nicholas Green. Mr. Green, are you there?
And hi, nice to finally see you all in person. Thank you, Lee, for promoting me and for the recommendation to do so from the commissioner. Chairman Sabo, Councilmember Del Chapo, members of the commission, it's a pleasure to appear before you again on behalf of my pro bono client, Charleston Carriage Horse Advocates. My name is Nicholas Green. I'm a partner in the law firm of Orrick, Carrington, and Sutcliffe, where I practice public policy law. And me and my family are very happy Ragboro neighborhood residents. And indeed, Dr. Weinstein, I believe we're practically neighbors. I took on this matter on behalf of CCSHA for two reasons. The first is that I believe in free speech and assembly, and especially the right to petition government for change. This organization has been under attack by the carriage industry in the public sphere and in court for expressing its genuinely held beliefs. But that doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make their beliefs unworthy of consideration. The second is that I personally believe that regulation of this industry is desperately needed for the benefit of our visitors, residents, and yes, even my 3 very young children who walk the sidewalks of our city every day adjacent to carriages as we go to and from school, the park, and simply enjoy being in Charleston. The simple fact, having observed the subcommittee meetings and based upon my experience handling literally hundreds of bills in state legislatures around the country, is that the regulatory process for this industry seems broken, and I fear hopelessly so. We don't impose meaningful regulation before accidents happen. We don't impose meaningful regulation after accidents happen. We try our best not to do anything. We assume that simple, common sense safety proposals would inordinately impact these businesses without considering any of the real countervailing safety considerations. The current state of affairs creates tremendous risks for the Charleston brand, prevents operators from enjoying a level playing field with each other and other tourism industry participants, and I fear underscores a lack of leadership at all levels of our city government. You have the chance right now to change that narrative. I urge you to seize that opportunity. Just this week, we had an accident that involved injuries to a driver and a passenger. The Post and Courier reported this morning it was a broken ankle on the passenger. Both were transported to the hospital, as far as I can tell. A driver from another company apparently abandoned his or her carriage to tame a spooked horse, leaving their own carriage.
Mr. Green, I am your time is up.
Lee, I'm going to continue talking. I've, to be perfectly honest with the commission, I've devoted dozens of pro bono hours.
Point of order. If you were allotted 2 minutes, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're absolutely not in order to continue speaking. You could have asked the chair for permission. You did not. Your time is up. Thank you.
Well, Tim, I asked the chair for permission to continue speaking at this time. Thank you.
I don't think so, Mr. Grant. I think we need to move on.
Okay, well, and I appreciate your consideration of these ordinances. Please pass the city's proposed ordinance. And I wish that we had a better process for this. Thank you.
Mike, can I say something quickly?
Members of the commission can speak, certainly. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm only speaking for myself, but I hope others as well didn't appreciate the 50 to 75 emails that we all probably received in our inboxes today. Well, I'm all for public input and full discussion. It seemed like one or two would have sufficed, whereas I lost count after about 65, and most of them were from out of state, which I found to be just a very ineffective tool and a waste of time. And I know that we can't limit it, but I just want to state publicly that I really, really didn't appreciate the inconsiderate behavior of whoever was behind it.
I echo Barry's comments.
I echo as well. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. There are appropriate ways of approaching folks. And that was not it.
I agree additionally.
For the record, who was behind it?
I don't know that we should get into too much more of a discussion here because we're just in the public comment section, if that would be okay. I think we really should. Don't we have additional public comments?
I thought that was the last one. I may be wrong.
We do have one more. Although it looks like Mr. Sabo somehow got kicked out of the meeting. But while I will, next on our list is Angela Coffer. And while I do that, I will try to see if I can help get Mr. Sabo back on our call.
Amy, while he's doing that, are those links unique to each one of us on the commission?
They are.
I have not been receiving one for me, and I borrowed Mike, so I don't know if that impacted him when he got knocked off.
Your name is appearing, so I think Lee fixed it. So.
Oh, I renamed me. I took Mike's name and renamed me.
I will send you an email if you can just confirm that that's the correct email address. There may have been a typo or something in it.
I'll drop you an email real quick.
Thanks.
Okay, good evening to the members of the commission and to City Councilman Del Chapo. My name is Angela Koffler, and I speak as the representative of Historic Ansonboro Neighborhood Association, HANA, to clarify HANA's longstanding position regarding the regulation of carriage operations in our city and in our neighborhood. HANA supports efforts to establish and maintain reasonable, effective regulations to ensure the health and safety of citizens, passengers, and working animals. We endorse the proposed amendment to Chapter 29 of the Code of the City of Charleston with regards to safety, with regards to updating language that would have requirements for hitching and unhitching carriage animals. HANA appreciates your efforts to enhance the safety aspect of the carriage trade, hereby enhancing the safety of our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that is all of our, we did have one other person who had signed up to speak. However, she withdrew her request a few minutes before our meeting started. So I believe we are good to move on to our next, to the next item on the agenda, which is the subcommittee reports.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lee. Sorry, I got kicked out. I guess I got demoted. I could see everyone, but I couldn't talk. So I appreciate that, and thanks for all the public input. What I thought we would do is just kind of remind the commission as a whole, how we were recommended from the city staff and the legal staff to address some of the subcommittees. We were asked to take the requested ordinance and pass it through based on the focus of the subcommittee level. For example, the tour guide subcommittee covered section 1 through 3 of the proposed changes, which had to do mostly with licensing. The routes, parking, and tourism rules subcommittee dealt with sections 4 through 7 and section 9 through 12. That area of focus was training, design, safety, and compliance. And then the quality of life subcommittee was dealing with section 8, which had to do with the emergency and passenger safety. So what I'm going to do is just have the chairpersons of every committee talk to the commission about what they talked about. Anybody on that specific committee is more than welcome to chime in, and then we can have discussion as a committee in general. So I'll start with you, Mr. Yance. The first one on the list was tour guide subcommittee. Just give us a full report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The tour guide subcommittee met on June 8th to discuss sections 1 through 3 of the preliminary carriage proposal. The sections reviewed pertain to requirements for drivers of animal-drawn vehicles, the creation and requirement of animal-drawn vehicle driver's license, the process to obtain an animal-drawn vehicle's driver's license, including background checks, and the reasons for suspension of an animal-drawn vehicle's driver's license. A number of concerns were raised regarding the licensing of carriage drivers and background searches of carriage drivers. Several committee members felt this sort of licensing or permitting was unnecessary. The tour guide subcommittee voted 3-1 to disapprove sections 1, 2, and 3 of the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, that committee. Anybody have any discussions about or questions for the chair about what they discussed? All right, and so
I just wanted to confirm that the instructions were either to move it towards the full tourism commission or not, right? That's essentially what we were voting on in our, is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. And basically what it was for the subcommittees to get into a deeper dive on the wording and the conversations, and then to really analyze it to see if the recommendations made sense, and then to come today to bring it forward. Even if, for example, in that particular example, Mr. Yancey's committee said it was unfavorable, the commission still can review it. They just want, it just goes on record that the particular focus of the subcommittee, which is where everything starts at the process, came back to the point where they just didn't see merit in some of the changes. And so that's the recommendation from that particular subcommittee to the commissioners. So if right now, if you don't have any questions of how they attained that or why they came to an unfavorable ruling, there's no discussion, then we can go on to the next subcommittee. And then after that's all done, I think we can have some generic conversation on whole. So anybody else have any comments for Mr. Yance?
I would just like, if you don't mind, I just would like to ask why they found the license unnecessary, just a basic, what the thoughts were.
Well, I guess it was not a unanimous decision, but one of the things that we wanted to keep in mind as we went through the proposal is just keeping in mind where we are with respect to coming out of COVID and just the burden the industry's had in general. And we felt like the licensing requirement was just unnecessary, based on the past performance of the industry.
Thank you, Mr. Yance. Anybody else have any questions for the committee, subcommittee? Okay, then we'll move to the second one on the list, which is our routes, parking, and tourism rules subcommittee, and that's with Mr. McLeod.
Thanks, Chairman. The route and parking rules subcommittee met on June 9th to discuss sections 4 through 7 and 9 through 12 of the city's proposed carriage ordinance. We were presented with all three. I don't know if you guys were aware that those listening in, that there were kind of three pieces on the table, but ultimately we were looking at the city version. We had 3 of the 4 committee members there. We heard from similar people, Nicholas Green and some others that night. The sections pertain to a whole series of safety and training requirements, annual training certification, design safety standards, adding lighting to the carriage, how to size equipment appropriately on the mules and horses, issuance of a certificate for appropriateness. What was it? Oh, carriages following all posted traffic signs, and not allowed to operate after sundown, amending the carriage companies to have an employee trained in equine triage and first aid, amending an ordinance, involved in incident or accident, be inspected by a licensed equine vet. So it was a whole series of safety issues, and Council Del Chapo and Ms. Evans and myself were the three on there. We recognize the burden. After discussion, Evans made a motion that we're not necessarily approving this, but we think it should go to the commission. And that motion was approved 2-1 with the idea that send these sections to the full commission for review, but with the stipulation that these ordinances be further studied and explored. And Council Del Chapo and Ms. Evans, please comment if I got my report wrong at all.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. Is there any discussion or questions for that committee in terms of their findings and why they decided to move it forward? Ms. Evans?
Well, to say that we've kicked this can down the road for years and years, and we've finally gotten to something that is workable that the city's come up with, and we felt that that most of it was very, very acceptable. If not, then we could massage it a little bit and bring it up to a degree where people could all those involved would agree it was the best way to go. Right? I mean, we had to do something, and we felt like we liked it, but there was still that chance that if it was definitely not likable, then we could massage it a little bit. But we've kicked this can down the road for years now. And somebody's got to do something to make it end. I mean, you can't please everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you want something, you can do something.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for this particular subcommittee? Again, we're going to come back to this. We're just trying to go through all the subcommittees, and then we're going to address the conversation as a whole. So if there's no questions, I'm going to move on to the next subcommittee. Okay. The next one is Quality of Life Subcommittee with Mr. Kalinsky.
We met on June the 10th. All 4 members were present. Our charge was to review Section 8 of the preliminary carriage proposal. The first section dealt with an emergency ordinance to give the Department of Livability the right to call carriages off the street under emergency situations. The second one was a passenger safety ordinance. We discussed each separately. We voted 3-1 in favor of Section A of the emergency ordinance, which gives the Department of Livability the right to call carriages off the street under emergency situations. With discussion from the city, we voted unanimously to remove sections B, C, and D of the emergency ordinance that dealt with carriage companies providing an annual emergency plan to the city and requiring each carriage company to hold emergency training sessions for its employees, thinking that part was a little duplicitous. We, in regards to the passenger safety ordinance, we really felt that more details needed to be provided. The language needed to be changed. So we voted to unfavorably report the passenger safety ordinance. After we discussed the after we discussed section 8, we had a long discussion about other issues that may be important to commission members outside of the carriage industry. I'm pleased to say that all the members of my subcommittee have forwarded to Chairman Sabo a very thoughtful list of other issues that perhaps the commission could discuss and review in the not too distant future.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Kalinsky. I know just while he's on that subject, I did forward it to Lee, and we are in the process of discussion. I spoke with Dan at length about it, and we all agree that these recommendations to continue to have the commission drive the focus of what we were discussing. I think everybody, thought it was positive, and that we just need to figure out a way of managing it, perhaps with more monthly subcommittee meetings within the focus of that particular subcommittee, and let the commissioners drive the discussion of what we would like to talk about and focus on in terms of our purview, which is in the tourism side. So I think everybody was amenable to that, just to say that. And so anybody have any questions for Mr. Kalinsky's comments in terms of his subcommittee? Okay, good. I know that his committee attacked it a little bit different. They went by section, and then also adjusted some of the wording. I think in his subcommittee, there was some discussions that some things need to be adjusted and worded. And so that's why he thought some clauses were favorable and some others, which I think was a good approach to that. So I'm glad that you guys did it that way, Barry. So I think what we need to do now is just talk about the process of where we are in looking at this ordinance and breaking up into sections. There was a lot to chew here. I mean, even in my conversations with the city and specifically with Dan, I can't remember a time when the subcommittees had to address so much change in terms of the recommendations. And so I'm very sensitive to the fact that there was a lot here and that you all had to review a lot. And so I'm sure some of you probably need some more information, or just need to basically understand what your thoughts are, where you are in the process here.
Mallory, do you want to give an overview, maybe give them some insight, or I'll take your lead, or do you want me to give some insight? It's up to you.
Well, I'm happy to do that and kind of give an overview. So essentially what the whole commission is going to be doing is as a commission, you're going to be recommending that all the changes either go to city council. You'll be able to recommend, maybe some sort of quasi, some things go forward, some sections go forward, some sections do not. You can recommend no changes, or you could even vote essentially for us to take this back to the drawing board in piecemeal. So that's kind of the overview as to what the end game is for us today, at least in this section of your agenda. Do you want me to go through the entire ordinance very kind of quickly? I can do my share screen and go through that, but I know it's all right. I'm getting head nods, so yes. All right, give me one moment while I get that pulled back up.
Mallory, forgive me. Do we want to give an overview of how we got to this point and why we're here, or do you mind, or what do you think?
Oh, no, we definitely can. So as we stated in the subcommittees, there was an equine incident about a year ago, and we did receive input from the carriage horse advocates with a proposed ordinance. City staff put in countless hours reviewing this, working towards creating an ordinance that's best practices. We do have, we have Shannon Tillman, she's our equine manager. We have one of the only, if only, municipal equine manager, and her input was invaluable to this. So I don't want people to keep saying that this is biased one way or the other. I think that they say that if you're a mediator, everybody hates you. And I think the comments show that this is probably a pretty down the middle ordinance. However, this ordinance is going to y'all for consideration. I'm happy to massage it more, but this input came from our city staff who is on the ground, who's trying to be proactive in a situation versus reactive, which has been concerned in the past. So with all that work, this was sent out to the interested parties back in February. Both sides did reach back out to us. We did speak with both sides. And then we've sent you the input that both sides had provided to us. So that's kind of where we are today. As you heard from the subcommittees, it sounded like the first subcommittee did want more massaging. The first and second, and the third did, our third subcommittee did acknowledge the importance of the emergency component, section 8 of the full ordinance that's before y'all. So that's what got us here. I will put this ordinance up now with a share screen. Y'all please yell at me because I have a habit of forgetting to unshare screens. To the full ordinance in place, and because that's, let me see if I can make that bigger.
You're sharing your browser, not the.
Oh. My apologies for
We
that.
started on the ordinance, so it shifted.
No, I do appreciate that. There we go. So that better now.
Yes.
I wasn't going to get through the full pandemic without messing that up at least once.
Could you enlarge that with the plus sign a couple times? I think it was down at the bottom when you were, there you go.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so here is, here's the ordinance. I'm just gonna power through it in its entirety. I'm sure y'all have all already read it and heard all sides for discussion for it. Essentially, section 1, just notifying that we are, making modifications to chapter 29. Section 2 is where we did discuss having basic requirements for drivers, minimum of 18, have to have the animal drawn carriage driver's license. We did for the section 3 discuss that they do have to have the license in order to be able to legally operate within the city limits, with the exception that obviously if somebody was actively training to receive their permit. The next section is we talk about what the application would entail for somebody to receive their permit. Obviously basic information and proof of certification. You've heard a lot of talk about CONA, that is the trade organization that is specific for carriage animals. They do have standard guidelines that we have reviewed and do think that are a very good solid foundation. However, with all the comments, if it's something the committee wants, I'm happy to actually codify more specifics into that versus just being deferential to CONA. Doing a background check, this ordinance would require that any tour guide operator would need to have a background check to ensure that they don't have any, the way it's currently written, any sort of felony or misdemeanor involving a sex offense, animal abuse, or any violent act against person or property. I don't mean to speak out of turn, but in the first subcommittee, there was discussion at least on striking misdemeanor from that. However, that subcommittee did ultimately decide not to move this entire section forward. The next section is just approving what to do once it's been approved. Then we discuss the fees. Fees are very regulated in the state. These would only be minimal to essentially cover the cost of processing the permit. There's a process to renew the permit, and then there is also the process for the revoking or suspending the permit. And there's also obviously an appeals process, and then another appeals process should any of the previous suspension or revocations occur. I think that was the end of what the first subcommittee had reported back to. For the next section is where we talk about having basic training certifications. We thought it was important that there be an annual training for the tour guides and the carriage operators. We felt that it was important to have a training program for any employee that comes into contact with the animals, and then there to be a basic training for any employee who operates within the carriage company. We recognize that obviously each level of employee is a different expertise, but they should still have basic standards when it comes to those operations. And we would just ask that they would report back to the city on an annual basis that this training is completed and up to date. We talk about the next section, which is still section, I think the second subcommittee. We talked about having the animal drawn carriages inspected by a third-party engineer or mechanic, just ensuring that all of the carriages were still in proper roadway condition. Going back to, then for the next section, we discussed having more adequate light on the carriages, especially when there's inclement weather or at nighttime, just having adequate LED lighting with high reflectivity markers alongside the carriage. The next section was, we talked about having properly fitted collars, harnesses, essentially all of their tack and equipment, just ensuring that that is properly fitted and adequate. So we're going to jump around the section 8. This was with the third subcommittee, where they considered the emergency procedures. My understanding is y'all have all seen this before. And after a little massaging in subcommittee, that subcommittee did vote to move the emergency procedures forward. As you see with the revisions, this would just give our Department of Livability the discretion if there is some sort of immediate emergency, albeit weather, it could be some sort of spontaneous protest, just gives the department the ability to use its discretion if they perceive there to be a substantial risk. Then that subcommittee also considered passenger safety. Although they did, this was not recognized to move forward here. During that discussion, the word chaperone was proposed to be added, and it does appear in this draft, but I just wanted to point that out too, that this was not only the emergency was recommended to go forward to full commission, but this passenger safety, when we did during the discussion, we just felt, the city felt that it was important to have some sort of age regulations, guarantee that there's a chaperone, and that there not be minor children in the back seats or on the sides. There had been an instance where a child had fallen. And so that was the background, the thought process behind this. But we also recognize that they wanted maybe put a little bit more massaging on that one. The next section, obviously need to be compliant, or the city could, refuse a certificate of appropriateness. Then there's the additional section for the totality of everything, just letting you know that there are consequences for violating any of these ordinances within the city. So, and I apologize, we're back to the second subcommittee right now. And that concluded the third subcommittee's review. For the compliance, like I said, there are consequences if this ordinance is not followed. The next section, city staff felt it was important that the carriages do follow posted traffic signs, that as well as they did find a concern with the carriages operating in the evening. There was discussion with the carriage industry regarding the 48 hours notice. However, there is a concern about the carriages operating after night when we don't have city staff readily available to be managing. With section 12, the final section, we talk about having, requiring that they do have at least one employee per shift trained in equine triage and first aid. We do ask that any reportable accident be inspected by an equine vet certifying, that the animal is healthy. We did have discussion since subcommittee and felt that C might be more appropriate to have discretion of our equine manager. However, that is obviously the deference for the commission to consider, but I just wanted to be open about that. And then as well as any reportable any accident, the carriage would need to be inspected before it was returned to service. So I'm going to remember to stop sharing my screen. That was a very quick run through of what all the subcommittees spent a significant amount of time discussing. So I'm happy to answer any further questions, as well as I'm sure anybody who city staff are also available.
I was just going to make a comment. Tim, do we need to get a motion on the floor in a second and then open for discussion?
I mean, we could either move into discussion or probably most appropriately just have some kind of a motion would be fine as well. We've not been too formal in the past about requiring a motion to have discussion.
Whatever is the will of the commission, I'm fine either way.
Well, let's open it up, and I don't know that we have to have a motion, but right now we're just still in the discussion phase of trying to figure out how everyone feels about where we are. You heard Ms. Shear talk about the fact that there were a lot of changes. There was a lot of discussions. Some of the subcommittees liked some wording and some not the other. I think the city, maybe Dan, you could just quickly say how the city feels about this. I mean, obviously, when the ordinance was brought to the city, you saw some merit in some of the things that were there and some of the things that have been, a pressure point for the city over the years. And so maybe just give the commission your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a long ride here the last few days, and I know a lot of people are frustrated with emails and trying to sift through all the issues we're dealing with. But the bottom line is, I'm going to go back 2 years when an incident occurred with a carriage company that the horse was loose and rode through the streets of Charleston, half hitched, half not hitched, and received really horrific injuries as a result of the incident, which resulted in placing that animal and putting that animal down. Hence, some of the emergency ordinances you see is having a triage, somebody trained in emergency triage to treat that animal, right after an incident. Following that incident, we did an investigation. We found that the simple cause is, and full disclosure, I will tell you that we reached out to the industry because they're the ones that do this work every single day. And I discussed it with Shannon at length. I said, how can we avoid this situation from happening again when you're trying to unhitch a horse or an animal, a mule, and avoid that animal from escaping, halfway hitched? Answer was simple. You have a full hitching process. There's a lead line from each side of the harness for the horse or the mule. Easy. So we came up with the ordinance. We got legal to draft it. It was adopted with the intent to possibly prevent future issues like this happening with a horse coming loose. Well, after that ordinance was passed in August of 2020, City Council was presented with a 12-page document from the Charleston Carriage Horse Advocates and Mr. Green, basically giving them ordinances that needed to be amended to address concerns that they felt that were important. And that's our responsibility. That's our duty to accommodate that. But the manner of which it was presented to council was not in the manner that it would be done through proper channels and protocol through city staff. So our normal protocol is Citizen Jane or Joe says, look, we want an ordinance amendment, or they go to their councilman. They come to us. City staff is obligated to investigate, to inspect, to come up with the right type of amendment to an ordinance or an ordinance change to address the specific issues that a certain individual or group is trying to present. So with that said, we as a city staff, and obviously a lot of people are forgetting about COVID. This is during COVID. We were inundated with other duties, but we still met regularly as a strong group with Mallory Shear, Amy Sutherland, Lee Burbidge, Amy Sutherland, or Shannon Tillman and myself, sorry. And we took these ordinance in consideration and we thoughtfully went through every single line over a period of 6 months or more. Everybody did their research, everybody did their homework, but we felt that at the end of the day, that the preliminary draft that Mallory drafted was legal and practical to enforce, which is the ordinance in front of you today. Now, that said, total transparency. My goal was to go into this process as we have done before, try to get through the heartaches and the obstacles prior to even coming to the subcommittee, and try to come to some compromise on both sides of the fence, if you will. That didn't happen. And I'm going to tell you right now, not at city's preference, that didn't happen in the manner that we felt it should be necessary. We sent this ordinance out on February 19th to both the Carriage Horse Advocates Attorney and the CARES and carriage industry. We said, hey, we invited both to the table. Let's come to the table. Let's get through these items. Let's talk about this. Let's vet this before we go all the way to the subcommittees to where we're ending up. We're exactly where we're ending up now, which I tried to avoid, which is not happening. That went by the wayside. March the 4th, I will give credit to the CARES and the industry. They met with us by Zoom. We talked through this. They were hesitant, but they agreed that yes, this is a type of ordinance that is enforceable, but they would have some recommendations to that, and that's all fair. Never heard back from the carriage horse advocates. I sent many emails to both sides. I never heard back from the CARES group until April 19th. I reached out to both. Still no response. I need your input. Let's get this done. Let's get it vetted. Let's get through the weeds and let's get this going. That never happened. Finally, it came to the point to where we had to do something with this ordinance. We have it drafted. We need to do something. We need to move forward. And at this point, it was the final straw was carriage advocates. Nope, we want our original ordinance to go forward along with our proposal. So we did that. So you're talking several months in the hands of both sides, procrastinating, not giving good input until the last minute. And now here we are again, taking up everybody's time to try to do one common goal, to help our industry, our city manage an industry, this carriage industry, in a manner that is safe and in a manner that is accomplished or can be accomplished by enforcement. So I know I'm rambling. I get passionate with this stuff. The waters have been muddied here in the last week or so with emails going to both sides, giving information to both all of you that is not totally the accurate information that should be given. So here we are again, trying to come up with solutions, trying to come up with something that's enforceable. And again, we're taking time from other issues that we can be focusing on with the tourism in Charleston. So I let it out. That's me. And it's your decision. We will honor anything that this commission agrees on. And we can go back to the table, but I can honestly tell you, my staff, legal included, very proud of, worked very hard to try to get this accomplished before it got to this day, June 23rd, right now at full commission, to try to weed this information out. That didn't work. So here we are again. But we will take your lead in where you want to go with these amendments and these proposals.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody have any questions for anything, the comments that were made? Yes, Mr. Brown.
I have a book on slavery. It's called Slave Ordinances, where they wrote so many ordinances on how to regulate slavery that people just breaking the law all over the place because the slave couldn't read the ordinance. They don't know what they were doing wrong. And I feel we're in the same predicament almost. Most everything that we discussed, these ordinances that have brought before us has been, in my 2 years' time or more on the board, I've heard them, but all of them. And we have voted on them, we've taken it account to the council and everything. Only new thing I hear this time is the driver's license and the background check, and I think it was the drug testing. That drug testing is something that the city doesn't have any unless I don't think the city have any the city will do that unless Mr. Domain can tell us about that. But I don't think the city have anything to do with drug testing. But otherwise, nearly everything we talked about has been already addressed. Someone mentioned the traffic lights. The animals, reason why they don't stop at most of the traffic lights because it's hard for the animals to get back into the flow of moving. So those places there, some places of Charleston, but animals don't really stop at a stoplight. They know where it is, and it's usually a wide intersection. The drug testing, well, that's new also. And the railings, for the safety reason, the railings, I don't have much thing against that. If they want to put a higher railing on the carriages, I ought to use the drug testing if they want to do that. Otherwise, most everything else, and as far as if an accident occurs and administering help, you would administer help if you see that the death situation coming on. You can prevent a death situation. Otherwise, you call yourself administering help and don't know enough about it, or even if you had some training in it, if you're not proficient in it well enough, and you cause somebody to die, you can be sued. That's a bad situation. It's called 911 immediately. And I had a lady on my tour had a heart attack. The first thing I did was call 911. And before I can do anything, the ambulance was there. So much has been repeated or has been done that it's confusing. I can understand why Mr. Riccio is confused in this situation right now, because it all been presented to us over and over again. So I'm just wondering if we can just pick out a few things that hasn't been addressed, or like the drug testing, the high railing on the carriages, lighting, the lighting, driver license, and the background check. I've thought about it from the last meeting. I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think it's too much to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anybody else have any comments?
I believe Ms. Broadus has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, you're on mute, Ms. Broadus.
Can you hear me? Wait a minute.
Yes.
Yep.
Tell me if you can hear me, because I'm not too
We can hear
familiar
you.
with this. Okay. I am new, as you well know, and I have lots of questions, but I don't want to bore people who have been part of this for a very long time. And so I'm going to cut to the chase with respect to the request for carriages to be on the streets after sundown if they give a 48-hour notice. I think that's probably okay, but I think that there are some issues with that, because darkness is darkness. And so if a horse is out there after hours, I think that he's presumably worked pretty much the day. I'm sure they regulate how long they work, but I think that that's a problem that's always going to be in conflict. And I don't have a bone to pick with with whatever side, but I just think that 48 hours doesn't change the fact that it's still at night. And there may be a way to reroute where that horse can go for just 48-hour tours. The other thing was a problem that I remember in my discussion on 1 to 3 section was that misdemeanor, felony, misdemeanor, and they said if you reviewed it and they crossed that out, I hope that there is a way in which that can be solved, because if you have a misdemeanor, there at some point in time, that person had issues. They should be, if they're interested in a job, they should be willing to find a way to expunge their records so that they have a clean record if what they did was so minor that it doesn't make a difference. But I think if anything ever happens, like an accident, and that person has a misdemeanor, that's going to be something the law will zero in on, no matter whether it is serious or not. And there was one other thing, but right now I can't remember. Oh, the driver and the tour guide, 2 people on the carriage. That was something that I remember was a big issue, and the carriage companies think you're trying to put them out of business. Because I'm new, I don't have the vernacular and the wording that I should be using, but there should be a way in which we could get them to give us some accounting of what it would cost to adjust their accounting so that the people who are getting paid to do 2 jobs you can get someone to do the driving and then doing the touring, because it's difficult at best to do those 2 jobs, even though they say they don't. It's all about money. And I think it takes money to make money. And so if they are allowed to give an account on how they can work that system, because not everybody's up to the $15 an hour. And I don't know what they're making. I think that's what is the missing link. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else have any more comments? Yes, Ms. Moore.
You're on mute.
Just want to say thanks to everybody who, all the subcommittee people who put in their time and gave thorough discussions. And I respect everybody's opinion. And I think that I know our subcommittee came to a good decision to move forward with one piece of it and to review another piece. And I don't know what the process is, but are we able to move forward with the subcommittee recommendations, or are we going to go through the whole thing?
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I think that's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just going to it's ultimately up to you. Somebody needs to make a motion and you really can chart your own course. You guys could decide that you want to take certain sections forward. You may want to take certain sections and give them back to city staff to work on with suggestions. You may decide to report the whole thing out favorably. It's really in your hands.
So, I had the privilege of sitting through all of the subcommittees and in the discussion, and I think Mr. Yance talked about the fact that the timing was bad, and I don't disagree with that. I heard from a lot of people knowing that we were going to have this discussion in the city, all of them tourism related, and many people thought it was just enough good time and wanted to have a sense of more time. When I spoke with the city, I think the city and the staff feels like these discussions been round and round and round and kind of the Groundhog Day approach, and they just want to move on. My sense on it, and just so I can put my personal feeling on record, is that there's a lot here, and there's a lot that the commission has been dealing with, and I still don't have a good sense of what particular word we want to use, what particular phrasing we want. Some of the sections we part of the through, part of not, and so I want to make a motion that perhaps we defer and table this and have a clear proposal with no scratched out wording, a clear proposal brought back to the subcommittees as the original intent, so that we could bring something that's clear and not so ambiguous back to this commission for review or for pushing it back up. I know that's frustrating to some of you on the call, because I don't want you to think that your time was wasted or put down the fruit. I just don't have a good sense hearing all of you talk about the fact that some words are here and that word doesn't work, and the 48 hours that will put us out of business. I just don't think we're there yet. And so my motion is that we table this discussion, send back for further clear documentation of what we're actually putting on forward to the commission, and then we can either look at it favorably or unfavorably. So I just need a second.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Just raise your hand if you don't mind so we can see it. All those opposed?
Oh, sorry.
Can we discuss?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we could have a discussion before a vote, correct?
Well, but you already had the vote. Now, wait, you can't go backwards and remove the vote. You had a vote, so you can't have a discussion. You already voted.
I did not vote.
Well, then, but you had an opportunity to vote. So
I didn't have enough time to say anything. The motion to vote, and then the vote happened faster than I could click the button to.
Yeah,
Tim, I'll yield to you.
I don't think there was a call for discussion.
I don't think that there was a call for discussion. There should have been a call for discussion on the motion. And so procedurally speaking, let's have discussion. And I don't see any prejudices, they would say, that would come from discussion. And if anyone is inclined to, then we can vote on it. And presumably those who need to vote for it in the same way will vote for it the same way, or if their mind is persuaded.
Could we please have the motion? Could we please have the motion restated?
Yeah, so absolutely. I make a motion that we table the discussion and ask that the document that we presented go back to the city and the subcommittee levels, so that we can actually present one version with all of the wording as we intended to come back to this commission on the next meeting, which is in August. So in essence, the motion is to table this into August, with it going back to the subcommittees for further development and refinement. So now I'll open it up for discussion.
My question would be, and maybe this is in the form of a suggestion, but my question would be, what's the intention to go to parties other than the city? I think we have 3 parties that asked for a tabling. One was Charleston Cares, which is the industry. Another was Convention and Visitor Bureau, wanted more time to review, and the other was the Charleston Tour Association. Is there intention to go back to each of those parties for their additional markup or comments?
I don't think so. That's not my intention. My intention is just to put it back in the subcommittee. I mean, we had two subcommittees rule out unfavorable, even though one of the unfavorable out of Barry's, some of the wording was good and some of them was bad. But in general, I think we passed. Again, it was very unclear which particular sections came in and out. And my intent is to have one clear document that we can put in front of us, so that we can look at what actually the subcommittees approved or didn't approve. Anybody else have discussion?
So,
I'm sorry, let's go to Ms. Moore first.
Yes.
Would it be possible to maybe get a list of all the things that were put out favorably and the things that were not put out favorably, and maybe move forward on the things that were put out favorably and work on those?
I think so. I mean, if that's what the commission would like to do, I think right now we're just trying to look at the motion. Do we table or not table? Ms. Evans, did you have a comment?
Well, I think we had another person who wanted to say something there and has been trying to.
I'm sorry. I thought Mr. Klunsky, go ahead.
My question, Mike, is I agree, but I feel like we have some momentum to kind of conclude this. And I can personally say I'm rather anxious to conclude it, although conclude it in a competent and credible way. Is there any way we could amend your motion and meet in July instead of kicking it down for 2 more months?
I think that's fair. Are you talking about the subcommittee level?
No, I'm talking about subcommittees meet again, and the full commission meet again to take up and conclude this issue at the end of
How are we
July.
going to conclude this issue if we're discussing the same thing? Are we eliminating number 2 and number 3? Are we still only dealing with number 1, the city proposal, and making changes in that?
Yeah,
Or are we
Commission,
doing,
the subcommittees looked through the city's proposal because they had the presentation to us. Even though we reviewed as a commission all the other 2, we were able to see the changes. We actually based all of our wording from the city's recommendations. But then with guidance that they actually reached out in a collaborative way to meet with the other two parties
so
that presented.
the only thing that is be put back to the committees is the city's proposal, right? To massage and make changes in.
That's correct. Just to get a final version, because basically, and I'll use Mr. Polinsky's committee. He had 2 sections. Some of one section he eliminated, 3 parts of that section, but the first part was recommended out. And so I think again, there's a lot of ambiguous aspect. I sat through all 3 meetings. I'm still not even clear, having sat through these, which particular phrases and wordings we accepted and which ones we didn't. And so I just don't feel like we have a collective, clear view of exactly what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, I think we're there personally.
Well, are the things that were objected to being left out, as in the things that are in the advocate's proposal and in CARE's proposal? Are those being, I mean, those, we're not dealing with those anymore. We're only dealing with number 1, with the city ordinance and massaging it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, ma'am, exactly. So the city basically took in consideration of all the proposals and made a 3rd proposal. Both proposals made a 3rd proposal, and they took some ideas and wording, I think, and included that. So what we did is that we decided to only focus on the city's version with that respect. So,
okay.
Any other discussion?
I agree with Mr. Kalinsky that the faster we can move this along, the better. So yeah, if we can set July as our next time to get back together, I'd be in favor of that. And actually at the subcommittee level, we can call for input from whomever we want who has expressed interest in making more comment, including Charleston Cares and their 48-hour issue.
Okay, Councilmember Del Chapo.
I do have something that I want to say, but I've noticed that Brumby and Daryl have had their little hand icon up for longer than I can even remember. So I would like for them to have the opportunity to speak, and then you can come to me so that we keep order.
All right, I'll recognize Mr. McLeod then.
Thanks, Chairman Sabo. I was trying to get these comments in before the motion because I heard a couple things from Dan I thought that were very relevant. I've thought this ordinance is very onerous. And I'm like, why is the carriage company being these things put on it? I mean, we have all sorts of tourism issues in this community, and we don't require this kind of background check of our people that work in our hotels or our restaurants. It just seemed extremely onerous. But the biggest thing Dan said is the way this got to him. You know, when they had the incident, they addressed it with the carriage industry. And I feel like this needs to go, the fact that they're meeting now is probably where this should be, meaning the carriage industry and the livability, this tourism group should be meeting with them to get this ordinance. I like what the city's put together, but now let's get those 2 parties in the room. We've had a lot of outside influence, but this is very onerous on one group. I mean, we don't have straight sidewalks. People jaywalk, thousands of people jaywalk per day. We have poor lit areas of our city. We have gun violence problems. We have incredible parking issues. Cars don't follow the rules either. It's like, so why go after something that's been so uniquely Charleston? And this idea that Kona doesn't share their stuff, our city had no problem. Mallory, that the Kona stuff is in the ordinance. So I know that we could be setting an example of how to regulate this if we can kind of let the city and this team work with Kona and the carriage industry to put together legislation that might preserve something that's very uniquely Charleston. And so I would encourage not sending this back to the subcommittee, but getting Dan and his team to get closer with the carriage industry in Kona to get this to be balanced, just like they did when they did the first change. I think going back to the subcommittee, I think that's what Ms. Evans, when we made our motion to move it, we were kind of saying, all right, this is getting somewhere, but now let's let the people who really do this for a living get in it and bring us a better ordinance. That's what I'd like to see. So thanks for that time.
Exactly. Here, here.
Okay, and I think it was, Councilmember, you said it was Daryl had his hand up. Is he the other person?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Daryl. I'll recognize you.
That's all right. Thanks for noticing, Councilmember. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that I feel like my one goal would be to let's go ahead and make a timeline and stick to it. And it sounds like Dan has already tried to go back to the, he was mentioning he'd gone, offered the different organizations, both sides chances, and they're not getting back to him and they're stonewalling perhaps for their own reasons. So as far as this committee is concerned, why can't we, if we're going to amend this motion that it's going to go back to, I definitely think we need to be able to see the permanent wording. Why can't we just say, okay, the city by this date is going to give us permanent wording. By this time, we're going to have it in our subcommittee one last time so we can approve that. And then if both of these factions would like to, instead of meeting behind closed doors, they may present themselves to this committee and we decide in August what we're going to do with it one way or another. Because we all can't agree. We're not going to agree on every single line of this. So let's just set a timeline and have if we want to have the subcommittees do it look at it one more time when we have the proper wording, and then bring it to us for a vote where we vote on the whole thing, yay or nay, and allow the two sides, if they want to have the opportunity, then it will be public that they had the opportunity, so they cannot say we weren't allowed to speak. Can we set a timeline if we're going to defer this?
I think that's reasonable. I'll ask Dan. I know Dan has expressed in his comments earlier that he feels like he did reach out to both sides. And I do think, Dan, you have their attention now based on the fact that this is in front of the commission. And given the fact that there's a motion to defer, how do you feel about what Mr. Wade is talking about?
I appreciate Mr. Wade's support. I can tell you that we did try to come to the table. We did try to vet everything and come to not everybody's going to be happy, but as in any mediation, you have to come up to some compromise in any issues that come up. But if I could entertain anything tonight, the only positive I think coming out of this is the approval of the emergency ordinance. Can we get something done and show that we've, as a commission, as a city staff, have accomplished something? Can we move forward on the only proposal that was approved? And we actually redacted most of it, but kept the heart of the emergency ordinance. Can we at least proceed with that? And that's something we don't have to worry about later, and go forward with going back, everybody suggests, and relook at things and come to some kind of compromise.
I agree with Dan, and I would like to move forward with passing that emergency weather and anything else that was turned out favorably. The things that were turned out unfavorably, I think we just take off the table, and then that'll save us some time when we go back to our subcommittee meetings and have to get all our wording right. Go back and work on the things that we want to change, but the things that were turned out unfavorably, we need to just get off the table and pass, the extreme weather, which came out favorably.
But you have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. That has
Yes.
to be voted on before you can start changing everything else again.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Weinstein.
Unless the person who made the motion agrees. And also, I appreciate the fact that this is more open, casual conversation, but I would really appreciate it if people raise their hand and are called on to be recognized, rather than just unmuting yourselves and starting to speak, because there's people who are kind of obeying and waiting to be called on, and they're not being called on because other people are just jumping in and speaking.
I'll recognize you, council member. I know you were waiting to talk and deferred, so.
Thank you. And I was just going to say the same thing that Lewis said, was that there's a motion on the floor in a second. So unless the person who made the motion agrees to amend their motion, we need to move forward with what's on the floor. I agree with everything that Brumby said. I think that, you know, and Daryl, kind of a combination of the two, you know, I get it. I understand that there's been a lot of back and forth, and, you know, things haven't been as timely as Dan has set forth and expected. I also know that trying to send things piecemeal forward to council isn't gonna fly. You know, that's not what we want. We want one comprehensive thing to come before us. And if we're doing a little bit here and a little bit there, and this has got to go back, I think I'm going to wind up with 11 people who are very frustrated with me. When the point is that we want to try to get to something that generates a consensus. And right now, we don't have that consensus here. You're not going to get a consensus amongst the minimum of 7 that you need in council. I can't imagine going to my council members and saying, hey, this is what's coming out of committee, because I don't even know what's coming out of this committee. It's been too piecemeal. I feel very siloed, like I had to be in on the other 2 subcommittees in order to really understand everything that was going on. So I'm not really leaning toward sending this back through the subcommittees. I like Brumby's idea of it. We set a time limit and it comes back before all of us, and then it goes to council. I think that's cleaner. Again, we don't have a clean version, and I understand legal, when they do ordinances, they have to cross through and red line and all of that. But it is nice when you can just see what would be presented before us. And even if, you know, grayed out across the back, it's draft, preliminary, you know, not for final vote, or, you know, whatever wording you need to use, just so we get to some sort of clear expectation. I know, Dan, I know that you've had meetings as late as yesterday, going through some of these things and coming to some different conclusions based on various conversations. And so I agree with the deferral. I don't agree with it going for 2 months. I don't agree with let's go back to subcommittees and all of this. I just think that invites too much more back and forth. I think we meet in a month. If that's enough time for livability and legal to help work through some of these changes that have been proposed and conversations that have been had, and then a new version comes before us and we go from there. If there's something emergency wise that we need to do right now, that's a different story. But my preference would be, if it can hold out for a month, let's hold it out for a month and do it all at once, and then send it all to council all at one time. Because as far as council, you know, is what we have in our mind. I can't speak for my fellow council members, but in my mind, I'm going, didn't I just vote on changes to the industry? Because we did, with as far as the hitching. So, you know, you get all this stuff going in your head, and it's just too much back and forth, and it creates a lot of inconsistency. And the people who are experts in this industry are the industry itself. And, you know, these animals are very expensive. And these are family businesses that have been in these families for generations. They are not trying to do themselves in. You know, I mean, that horse had to be put down, and you've never seen a more devastated family. When they had to put that horse down, they lost a member of their family. It's the same as when any of us, you know, lose a pet. these are not things that they take lightly, and they just, haphazardly run their businesses and, hire whoever walks in and whatnot. And so to treat them like that, I think is disrespectful. We should all be afforded that, they're running an honorable business. They've been in this city for generations, and I think we should afford them that opportunity to, and offer them the benefit of the doubt. And you know what? I mean, I hate saying it. Sometimes really bad things are also just going to happen, and we are never going to make something that's foolproof. And if that's the bar, we're never, ever going to get it. And we're going to constantly be disappointed, and we're going to constantly be coming back and layering on something else. And so I just ask that we keep that in mind, and we keep this more holistic and think about, the industry as a whole and what works comprehensively and holistically, rather than all kinds of pieces of the puzzle coming in. And that's where I feel we are now, and we're going to continue to find ourselves in this position.
Thank you for your input. I think it was well said. And I am willing to amend my motion. But Dan, I just have a quick question for you. If we take the recommendations of the commission and we push it back to the staff and your group, and not to the subcommittees, being that they already had a chance to review it, and we move it to July, are you prepared with that timeline?
Very difficult, because if we don't have, it's all about compromise. It's all about it. How much more can we do? Mallory has drafted this with the input from 5 different other employees. I can't answer that, Chairman.
Well, what my vision is to Councilman's point. If we're going to present something that's concise and something that's direct, I don't feel like this commission even has a consensus of what that looks like. I mean, we each have seen certain parts of it. We've seen some clauses yes, some clauses no. We've seen some words change. My point of going back to the industry is to more or less refine exactly what we're going to recommend to the council, so that we feel good as a commission that it's what is in the best interest of the city. And it's something on one document that we can actually have. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, my thinking going into this, I knew it would be overwhelming to everyone. No one wants to be handed a bunch of pages of ordinances. I wanted it one piece at a time. But if we did that, it would take quite a bit of time. If that's what you would like to do, we could take one portion at a time as manageable, which I feel that we did a good job doing. So the difficulty is, where do we go from here? What if the commission and you give us guidance, what your expectations are from the time we end this meeting, we will do that. But in our minds, we did all the work that we felt this ordinance could be successful and oversee safety issues within the industry. Yeah, it seems like you're picking on them. Unfortunately, they're the only industry with an animal who can be unpredictable. And I will back up equine management 100%, that we have a very good system in place. However, we've done work on this for several months, so I would need your guidance of what your expectations are in 1 month to deliver you. I don't want to deliver you the same exact preliminary ordinance unless I have guidance to do what you are asking.
I think what I'm recommending is that you look at the recommendations from the subcommittee, and ones that were unfavorable or wording that didn't exist or we wanted stricken, we provide one document with all of that removed. You follow me? So the thinking would be, we take the feedback of what was favorable and what was not favorable, and we put all the favorable into that particular document with the recommendations. Then you have a chance to review it a second time and then bring it back to the commission for either a recommendation to move it to city council or for further discussion.
And
That's
if I
easy.
could, as a point of order, I think that the chairman's motion was exactly that. He asked for a straight copy without red line based on what the subcommittees had decided. And then that received a second. And so I want to try and keep us parliamentarily proper. And that's the motion that I understand we're asked to vote on. And I with due respect to the chair, I don't know that that included sending it back to the subcommittees. And I think y'all need to address that if that's what you want to do. But I think you need to address the motion that's on the table and vote on it if there's no further discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I also wanted to mention that Brumby and Brumby McLeod and Daryl Wade both have their hands up.
Okay. I'll yield to Brumby first then.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that did come out from Dan, Mr. Riccio, which was so relevant, is he admitted there's one element of this ordinance he wants. That's the first time I've heard that, right? And that is he wants the emergency piece to that. Well, I'd be interested in providing that because that seems to be the utmost importance, but it's the first time I've heard that. And then I strongly agree with you, Chairman Sabo, bringing this ordinance, a clean copy that is presented to us. And that's what I mean by sending back is we all got pieces of it that we are allowed to discuss. And we did not, in our committee, our subcommittee, we did not sit there and try to redact any pieces. We kind of looked at it collectively. We didn't do that kind of editing. So just wanted to share that.
Okay, I'll yield to Daryl.
Thank you. And Mr. Sabo did say he was willing to adapt his motion, and he was just asking for more input on that. So, Mr. Sabo, I wonder if you could adapt that. Perhaps you would consider with some sort of timeline.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for that. And so that was my thinking, is that I will amend it to defer it back to the city. I do agree with Councilman Del Chapo's that I don't know that we have to send it back to the subcommittee since they've already had a chance to see it. I guess I'm a little bit concerned, Dan, you never addressed my timeline question. Most of the commissioners want to move quickly and they want to move in the July timeframe. Are you prepared to, with the expectation that you would take it and do a concise cleanup of the subcommittee's recommendations and what you have recommended into one document? My recommendation or amendment would be that we defer or table with the idea or intent of having one document come out of your area by July. So are you prepared to meet that expectation?
And I will defer to Mallory. I think we can, but I absolutely think we can, but I have to consult with my legal attorney.
We will absolutely do our best to make it in that 1 month. I think what I would like some clarification on is, do you simply want a clean version from what came out of current subcommittee? Or did you want us to receive further engagement and give you a new clean draft?
No, my intent is not further engagement. My intent is to provide a clean draft. And if it's your will to give them one final view of it before you send it back to us, that's up to you. But my intent is to have one clean document where the council or the commission knows exactly what our recommendations are as a package. I mean, you heard Council Member Del Chapo say that the council does not appreciate, fractional type of perspective to it. They want everything there. And so the intent would be to have it all done at one time. So that's my motion, and I'll leave that as stands. My motion is to table it with the idea that we will put together a concise recommendation to either pass forward or reject with a timeline of July to meet the commissioner's desire. So do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Mr. Chair, I did want to let you know that Mr. Brown has his hand raised as well.
I apologize, Mr. Brown. I'm sorry.
Right.
I've got bad glasses. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
No. Before we vote, I was just wondering, on my computer, I'm looking at 37 participants, and there are 21 in the meeting. Do we have others on this meeting now?
Yes, we have attendees who are reviewing, but they're not panelists. So only the panelists would be on your screen.
Okay, so they can hear us what we're doing.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, we've had a second on the floor of Ms. Moore, so we're going to take a vote. All those in favor of deferring to my motion with the idea of one concise document and then bringing back into July for this commission. Just need to say, if you're in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, hearing no opposed, the motion carries. I appreciate everybody's, I think everybody here has the same intent. They want to have the clear things. Dan, I know that you wanted a quick win on the emergency thing, but I feel better presenting it all in one package, especially after hearing Councilmember Chapo's views of how the city would look at it on a city council level. Well, so thank you for
I
that.
totally agree. I totally understand.
Okay,
Totally
good.
agree.
Mr. Chairman, does that mean that they could take the input that they've received? I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
That's okay, Bromby. Go ahead. Bromby.
Mr. Chairman, does that mean that Dan and his team could come back and say, listen, we've decided we want the emergency element, and I mean, it could be just 2 items at that point if they take in all the feedback that's been provided from the subcommittee.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
I think in general, that's correct. I mean, he basically needs to clean up what we have discussed and come back with a final presentation that we feel comfortable with. And then even then, when we pass it to city council, it's the city council's decision to move forward. It's our job just to make recommendations as an advisory committee. So did I get everybody covered? Okay, good. I think, Lee, the next thing that we need to go to is on our agenda. Tim, I'm sufficing that that's behind us and we can move forward.
If there's no further motions as it relates to item 6A, then move on to 7.
Thank you. Any further motions? Okay, let's move on to, actually we're on, I guess it is old business. One thing I want to put on the floor for old business, and I spoke with Ms. Casella on our call here. I might just put you on the spot if you don't mind to talk about something from our minutes where we had addressed perhaps a mayor's office perspective on flooding. Can you address that real quick?
Sure, and I apologize for the not following up after the last meeting, after my first meeting, just a little confused on process, but I'm prepared for when the commission would like, either if we're full the July meeting, the August meeting, to have our chief resiliency officer from the mayor's office to come and give a brief presentation on some of the flooding strategies and issues for the city that the commission seemed interested in. So I can work with Lee and you, Mr. Chairman, to get that on one of the next agendas.
Yeah, perfect. I think what we're addressing as a commission, just so they're clear, is in the minutes from the February minutes, there was discussion about one of the commissioners that asked about flooding and how flooding impacts tourism. As we know, everything impacts tourism on some general level. So, but we felt like I had asked the mayor's office to perhaps update us on what the mayor's initiatives are and a timeline about what they've been working on, just so the commission had a resolution. And I know there was one other outstanding things on the minutes. I think it was Mr. Brown had brought it up about Savannah and about the dollar tourism fee. And I don't think we've had time to address that, Mr. Brown, but we certainly haven't forgot about it. And we're going to keep it to the next minute. Anybody else have any old business?
Mr. Chair, I did try to research Mr. Brown's question regarding the Savannah and the tour tax.
Yeah.
I was not able to find any information regarding that. I did try to reach out to Savannah's tourism office to our counterparts there to get some clarification. However, I have yet to receive any call back on them from them, but I'm happy to keep looking into it.
Okay, good. Thank you for that update. Anybody else have any old business they would like to bring forward? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is new business. The only new business I want to mention real quick is that you heard Mr. Klinsky talk about his committee recommending some other areas of focus for the subcommittees. In my discussions with Dan and the staff, we wanted to make sure that the commissioners knew what we're going to try to do is have more regular scheduled subcommittee meetings, perhaps monthly, perhaps whatever schedule the chair of those committees would like to have. And then we can continue to try to have a different approach. And I mentioned it earlier in the beginning of the meeting of how this commission is addressing things related to tourism. So I just want to put that on record under new business. Anybody have any new business like to bring forward?
Just real quick, Chairman, with that said about meeting regularly, it will give us the opportunity to collaborate with other departments in the city that are dealing with or responsible for the issues that were brought up, particularly in the last subcommittee with homelessness and other quality of life issues. So it'll give us an opportunity to engage other city departments to try to work together, collaborate, to give everybody on this commission the opportunity to do what they've signed up to do, make a difference in the tourism and quality of life for the city. So we look forward to doing that and facilitating that for everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Dan. I think that we appreciate it so much. I think it's a good point, and I know several of the commissioners wanted to address that. So at least we're moving forward with that plan. So any other comments for the good of the whole? Yes, Chad.
Just for clarity for my calendar, are we assuming that the July meeting will be the 21st? Third Wednesday?
Lee, are you looking at that?
I have to, I will email everyone tomorrow with some potential dates. I'm going to have to try to check with our department and with Dan, Amy, myself, and just try to see what we can figure out for a meeting in July.
Okay.
But yeah, the 21st might be, that would be probably the best potential. I'm looking at a calendar now, either 21st or even potentially maybe the 28th.
Would that be live?
We'll make it happen in July, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Would it be a live meeting or Zoom?
Well, I can tell everybody an update on commission meetings are still, all of them are Zoom, every one of them. We're meeting collectively as a city group to try to do hybrid and those things, but the only committee meeting is city council meeting hybrid and in person. So to this date, there is no other board or commission meeting in person. So until we get directives to do so and try to facilitate that, we will definitely do it at our first opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else before we adjourn?
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
I did wanted to, regarding the trying to address the issues that the different commission members want to address at the subcommittees. Want to just propose the idea, if you and the committee chairs are okay with this, is for all the members of the subcommittees, any issues that you wish to discuss, to email them to the chair of your subcommittee, and then and include Mr. Sabo. And then from there, if the chairs want to contact me for what goes onto the agendas, and I'd be happy to get that, put that together for your review.
Thank you for that. I know Mr. Kalinsky, I think he mentioned earlier that nearly everyone had their own perspective, and I did forward that to you. So you have some of those comments, I know. And I did some on Chad's Mr. Janss's committee as well. I think he had a couple of people, but definitely good recommendation just to keep things on record, right? That's your point. Make sure we have a listing of everything.
Well, to keep it on record and to keep sort of a normal line of communication, but also to make sure to kind of what Mr. Doman said in our first meeting back in December with this new commission, to make sure that we're avoiding any group discussions that could potentially be with it considered a quorum. And so we avoid any potential issues with that, so that each of the subcommittee members would speak directly to their chair. The chairs would speak to communicate that either with you or to me or both. That way there's no chance of an accidental quorum or anything like that.
Yeah, understood. Good recommendation. All right. Any other comments? Thank you guys for your time. I know this is a lot of work, and especially for a new commission. You certainly jumped right into the fire coming out of the gate. So I appreciate all your time and energy, and thanks to the staff and to our legal counsel for keeping us on track. So you guys Have a blessed July 4th, and we'll see you shortly. Take care. Our meeting adjourned.
Thank you.